So when you go and talk to the NHL or you're talking to the Olympic Committee, what are you recommending to them and what sort of actions are you coming up?
Yeah, well, we're recommending, I'll start off by saying not more advocacy because there's enough advocacy. I mean, we break down and say, listen, if we're not covering the why, always start with the why, Simon Sinek, why, what, where, who, when, and how. If we're not covering those 5 things, don't bother putting anything out because we don't need another advocacy campaign, do this. We don't need another research that says, oh, if you smoke, you're going to be at a greater risk for cancer. We already know that stuff. What we need to start doing is how. How do we pull people in and engage people into a healthy and active lifestyle?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rod Jans, and you're listening to the Get Inspired Talks podcast. Today's guest, Matt Young, was an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year finalist in 2010 and in 1999. He was a Business in Vancouver Top 40 Under 40 winner in 2011. He's the founder of Innovative Fitness, which has personal training fitness centers in Toronto, Victoria, and several in Metro Vancouver. Matt is also the founder of 60 Minute Kids Club Incorporated and the CEO of Personal Sport Record. Matt is very involved in charity, and of significance for this interview are some of the things that Matt has accomplished in sport, including being a Guinness World Record holder for the fastest bike relay across Canada in 2007. He's finished multiple Ironman triathlons and climbed a few notable mountains like Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Rainier, and Machu Picchu. In this interview, we discuss how sport helped Matt get through a very tumultuous childhood and the importance and galvanizing impact of sport on society. And now, without further ado, here's Matt Young.
I came from a small town of 1,600 people. And, you know, when I was coming through, I was a product of a dysfunctional family relationship. I had a prescription drug abuse mother. And that definitely exposed us to challenges early in terms of how to manage that. I had a father who was ironically a physician from a small town. He was never home. He was working a lot. So it gave us all of life's lessons in terms of dealing with adversity really early. One of the things was you've got a choice. So we're all in the game of life. We're dealt a hand of cards, and it's not the cards we're dealt. It's how we play the hand. That's what I've always thought about. So, you know, if you have adversity early, it sets you up really well, especially for all the things that we're going to get into in terms of the entrepreneurialism and the finding your way later, because you've already done that stuff. You've already had those hardships. So the hardships that are modern day hardships aren't really that hard. Most importantly, the benefit of going through that adversity early is a coping mechanisms. And I use sport to cope with that. So to be away from the house, I would get up early, I would go to the track and field, and I'd find myself there, and I was like, well, what am I going to do now? And I would just throw myself into trying different things, running, jumping, throwing, kicking, catching, and playing with my mates after school, in terms of after school pickup games and football and basketball. Basically, sport became an opportunity for me to create something for myself and be really good at something and get that feedback that I was really looking for. So it set me up for success and understanding some of the processes in our business. Our whole philosophy was challenge, adversity, victory, and we say there is no authentic victory where there is no adversity, and there is no adversity where there's not a challenge. So you kind of have to go through that process. And a lot of times we'll see nowadays that parents, especially in the sports system or in their parenting system, they're trying to create these victories for their kids, shield them from adversity and not challenge them. It doesn't work that way. You really need to go through that process of challenge, adversity, victory to get an authentic win for yourself. And if you're capable of doing that, the stuff that you learn along the way, I mean, it's not about the time, the victory, the medal, or anything else. It's really about the process. So going through that early really taught me about the process. So the institution of sport has, like everything else, come up against some challenges around the monetization of it, the professionalization of youth sport, which as soon as you hear yourself say that, you're just like, what do you mean the professionalization of youth sport? It's become a multi-billion dollar industry, where it used to be, parents would drop their kids off at school. There would be a great after school sport experience. Parents probably wouldn't make it because they were too busy working. Well, now you have a lot of parents that are there at every single practice, every single game, car coaching on the way home, looking for the bigger and better. Is there an academy that Johnny or Jenny can join to get the leg up on the next kid across the community, or, these travel teams? We've professionalized what should be a natural progressive pathway for kids and learning. So, and when I say we, it's an issue that's been recognized across the world. So from New Zealand to Norway to the United States and Canada, this is an issue that's becoming really severe because what the kids are telling us is that they didn't sign up for sport to be that professional player and play 7 days a week at 6 and 7 years old. They signed up for sport to hang around their friends and have fun. And, we're losing that. And, in the push for more medals, more membership, high performance, all these fancy things that seem like they should make sense. We're not delaying that anymore. We're pushing that down and shoving that down into, starting at 6 and 7 years old. So one of the things that we've got into was physical literacy, which, just like numeracy and other literacies, is the understanding of physical health and education. I think we've moved away from the Hal and Joanne body breaks and participation comments that were very pervasive in the earlys. Eat less and move more. Well, unfortunately, it's just not that easy, and the social ramifications of that inactivity, of that kids quitting sport, of technology coming in, of gaming, of the phones, of all of these distractions, have really had a big impact on not only the sport world, but the health, the social structure of communities. Used to be that youth sport was designed to bring communities together. You'd meet new people, you'd meet new parents, you'd meet new kids. Well, now it's actually pulling kids and communities apart because we're competing in our own communities against each other for that coveted captain or spot or whatever it is. And people are chasing scholarships and all this nonsense that's happening that's really detracting from the essence of sport. How we got into it was through the personal training opportunity. We would get called into schools to help teachers, help phys ed teachers, help kids and help parents understand what quality sport was, what quality coaching was. And, we would talk about the what and why. And we noticed that the biggest gap was the activation strategy. There was no how. So how do we, as parents, set up a structure at home where our kids are healthy and active? How do we as coaches set up an environment where we're not just catering to the top 3 on our teams, we're actually making sure everybody's being included? And that's not an easy answer. And there's a lot of different things that need to happen to make that happen. So, we've had some great discussions with organizations like the NHL, like the PGA of America. We wrote an activation and accountability framework for the United States Olympic Committee. We just came back from Norway, speaking to their entire sport federation. We've been in close contact with Sport New Zealand, and we've obviously had lots of discussions across our country in Canada. So this is an issue and an epidemic that's not. It's not just centralized to Port Moody. It's not just happening in one area. It's really starting to become something that's pervasive. And what's happening is the development funnel is shrinking. So usually the high performance was at the top, and then you had this great big area of development where people were pushing up. And, if they were good enough and loved it over time, they might have a high performance opportunity. Well, now, since we've shoved that so low, we're turning off people from the developmental end. So the pyramid is actually almost vertical. And, there's some serious ramifications In 5 and 10 years, we're worried about where our next group of competitors are coming from, whether it's in soccer, whether it's Olympians, whether it's NHL players, and you can see every year in terms of the NHL, there's more players from Sweden and the Scandinavian countries because they don't have academies. There's no such thing as an academy until you're 18 years old. So that's the kind of stuff that we're doing now, and it's really important work. Yeah, well, we're recommending, I'll start off by saying, not more advocacy, because there's enough advocacy. I mean, we break down and say, listen, if we're not covering the why, always start with the why, Simon Sinek, why, what, where, who, when, and how. If we're not covering those 5 things, don't bother putting anything out, because we don't need another advocacy campaign. Do this. We don't need another research that says, oh, if you smoke, you're going to be at a greater risk for cancer. We already know that stuff. What we need to start doing is how. How do we pull people in and engage people into a healthy and active lifestyle? And again, it's not a silver bullet solution. It's silver buckshot. I mean, you've got to do a lot of things. You're in sales. It's 6 to 20 points of contact before we make our sale. So how are we selling people on the benefits of being healthy, being active, being in sports, and the benefit of sports? And that's really the conversations that we have with those organizations. Most default, and will happily admit that they default to advocacy. We're going to throw out another campaign that says you should move more, or look at this study we did. That's the easy stuff. They check the box, it's done. But that's not moving the needle. If we could just tell people to do stuff and they did it, wouldn't we be in a much better world than we are in right now? So, we work with them on creative ideas, where to start. Let's not try to boil the ocean. Let's start with one community. Let's start with communities that are ready. Let's not push things on the communities. Let's pull them into the engagement, because we increase the likelihood of early adapters. Those are the kind of things that we review. What are our 20 points of contact? Is it a video? Is it a parent engagement meeting? Is it a youth engagement meeting? Is it coach education? Is it what are those points of contact? Let's be very specific. Make sure the language is the same. It's not uncommon to any other business venture that we're doing. But what we realize is, just because somebody was great at sport or a high performer in sport doesn't mean that they're naturally a great business leader or a high performance business leader. The two don't naturally just transition. So having a blend of people at the table with different skill sets is really what's proving to be effective.
And what sort of actions do you think the average person can take? Let's say I'm motivated by this podcast now to do something. What can I do in my community?
Great question. Number one, set a goal. Make the goal something that is tangible, that you have to work for. Make sure it's personalized to you. After you've set your goal, go surround yourself with people that have the same interests and same goals, because they're going to hold you accountable. Like you said about your hockey team, you look forward to seeing those guys on Thursday night or Saturday night, or guys and gals if it's co-ed. You look forward to seeing that tribe. So establish your tribe. Innovative Fitness was a tribe. You're right. We created community and made it okay to be slow, or it wasn't about your finishing time. It was about the process and the people that you met and the relationships that you formed. So, I'm biased, but you don't have to have a personal trainer. You can join a run group, a hiking group. There's so many different tribes that you can join of people that have similar interests. So do that. And then, make sure after you've set your goal, join the tribe, follow it through. Because once you factor that in and follow it through, it becomes part of your lifestyle, not something that you have to do. Oh God, I got to wake up tomorrow and I got to run my thing. You want it to be something that's you're looking forward to and that you're excited about, and then participate, give back. There's lots of great events, hikes, walks, be a part of them. You don't have, if you're not going to take part, volunteer, just be a part of them in your community, because that is community building, and that because you live in a great community that does a great job of that. And it's become part of the culture. So it's not a system, it's a culture. Yeah, they can go to matt@personalsportrecord.com. So matt@personalsportrecord.com, all one word, all lowercase. And just want to say thanks so much for doing what you're doing, because I really value the opportunity to share and hear what other people are doing. I think it's a great way. Podcasts are a great way to share some of the great things that are going on and the people that are making things happen in our communities.
Good, thank you. And we should mention there is a Get Inspired event coming up on October 20th here in Vancouver. So people like Matt and others, community innovators and people who are making stuff happen will be the speakers at that event. So yeah, thanks again for joining me today, Matt.
Hey, thank you. You're welcome.